I always thought love would come to me like in the movies, slow, warm, and real. When I met Daniel, it felt like it finally had. He was charming in that quiet, confident way that made you feel seen. I met him at a friend's barbecue 2 summers ago. I remember that day clearly. The smell of grilled corn, the sound of laughter, and Daniel sitting at the picnic table, smiling at me like I was the only person there. He told me he had moved to the US from Brazil 2 years earlier. He was still adjusting, working part-time jobs, trying to build a stable life. There was a soft humility in his voice when he talked about his struggles, and I admired that. I was a nurse, living alone in a small apartment, and honestly, I was tired of loneliness. Daniel seemed genuine, kind, and respectful, a man who listened. We started dating soon after that day. The first few months were a blur of romance. He brought me flowers, cooked me Brazilian food, and told me how lucky he felt to have met someone like me. I remember the way he would hold my hand in public, unafraid, and say, "You're my home now, Emily." I believed him. But love, or what I thought was love, has a way of hiding things you don't want to see. It started small. He would talk a lot about how hard it was living on a visa, how much he missed his family, how stressful it was to deal with immigration paperwork. I listened and tried to comfort him. He never directly asked for help. But one night, after dinner, he sighed and said, "If we got married, things would be easier. I could finally stop worrying about being sent back." It caught me off guard. We'd only been together 6 months. I laughed nervously. "You're joking, right?" He smiled, touching my hand. "No, not really. I mean, I love you, Emily. And I know it's fast, but sometimes when you just know." Those words, "when you just know," echoed in my mind for weeks. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe in love that strong. My friends were cautious, though. My best friend, Sarah, even said, "Emily, just make sure he's not using you to stay in the country." I got defensive. "Daniel isn't like that," I said. "He loves me." And I truly believed it. So when he proposed a month later, in our small apartment with the cheap ring and tearful words, I said yes. The wedding was small but beautiful. My mom cried when I walked down the aisle, and Daniel looked at me like he was his entire world. For a while, I really thought I had found happiness. We moved into a nicer apartment, decorated it together, and spent quiet evenings cooking dinner and watching Netflix. He was affectionate, attentive, and grateful, at least at first. When we filed the green card paperwork, I helped him every step of the way. I filled out forms, gathered documents, went to appointments with him. He always told me how thankful he was. "I'll never forget what you're doing for me," he'd say, kissing my forehead. But slowly, things began to change. After the interview with immigration went smoothly, Daniel started to grow distant. He spent more time on his phone, less time with me. He said he was tired from work, but sometimes he'd come home late smelling of cologne that wasn't his. When I asked about it, he'd laugh it off. "You're imagining things, babe."
The arguments, small at first, then louder, sharper. He complained about everything: my cooking, my job hours, even my friends. Once, when I tried to plan a weekend trip, he said, "We don't need to do everything together, Emily. I need my own space too." That hurt. The man who once couldn't stand to be apart from me now acted like being near me was a burden. Still, I stayed. I told myself marriage was about patience, about compromise. Maybe he was just stressed about his immigration case. I tried harder, cooked his favorite meals, wrote him love notes, surprised him with small gifts. But he barely noticed anymore. When his green card finally got approved, he seemed happy, but not in the way I expected. It was like a weight had lifted off his shoulders, not ours. He celebrated with his friends, not with me. He didn't even invite me to the dinner they had for him. That night, he came home late again, half drunk, with a smirk on his face. "You don't need to worry about me anymore," he said, collapsing on the couch. "Everything's good now." I wanted to ask what he meant, but I didn't, because deep down, something in me already knew. A few days later, I found an email on his laptop. I wasn't trying to snoop. He had left the screen open. The message was from a woman named Lara. It said, "Can't wait to have you back, baby. I told my parents you'll be home soon. They're so excited to meet you again." I froze. My heart started pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Home. Back. Again. It didn't make sense until I scrolled down and saw old photos attached. Daniel with her in Brazil, smiling, hugging, kissing. The timestamp on the message? 2 days after his green card approval? I sat there, staring at the screen, my chest tightening with every second. My hand shook as I scrolled further, reading messages that broke me piece by piece. He had been planning this all along. The marriage, the affection, the fake promises. It was all for one thing: his residency. Tears burned my eyes as I whispered, "He used me." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake listening to his steady breathing beside me, wondering how someone could fake love so perfectly. Every "I love you," every smile, every touch, all a lie. By morning, something inside me had changed. The woman who once loved him had died quietly in the dark hours of that night. And what remained was a calm, cold resolve. I didn't know exactly what I'd do yet, but I knew one thing for sure. Daniel wasn't going to walk away from this so easily.
For the next few days, I lived in silence. I smiled when Daniel looked at me, cooked his breakfast, washed his shirts, and all the while, my heart felt like glass ready to shatter. Every time he walked out the door, my mind replayed the emails I had read. "Can't wait to have you back, baby." Those words haunted me. I started noticing things I had ignored before. His sudden obsession with checking his bank account, his calls in the hallway late at night, his neatly folded documents that he guarded like treasure. And the biggest clue? The travel app open on his phone one morning, showing a flight search from New York to Sao Paulo. He didn't know I saw it. He didn't know I was already watching. I needed proof, solid proof, not just for myself, but what I was planning. I couldn't go to immigration with just suspicion. I needed something that showed he had manipulated me from the start. So I began collecting everything. Screenshots of his messages with Laura, copies of emails, notes of the dates he came home late, even the conversations we'd had about the green card. I wrote down every detail I could remember. My phone's hidden folder became a vault of heartbreak and evidence. Sarah, my best friend, was the only one I told. I met her at a cafe downtown one evening, and when I showed her the messages, she went pale. "Oh my God, Emily," she whispered. "He planned this the whole time." I nodded, staring at my untouched coffee. He used me to get his papers, and now he's leaving me behind like I'm nothing. She reached across the table, grabbing my hand. "You can't let him get away with this." I looked at her, my eyes tired but steady. "I won't." Back home, Daniel acted like everything was normal. If anything, he seemed lighter, happier. He started packing small things, clothes, personal items, claiming he was organizing his closet. He didn't realize I could see the pattern. A few things missing every day, like he was slowly erasing himself from my life. One night, I finally asked, "Daniel, are you planning something?" He froze for a second, then forced a laugh. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've been distant. You barely talk to me. You're packing. You've got flight searches on your phone." His smile vanished. "Why are you going through my stuff?" "I wasn't. I just saw..." He cut me off, voice cold now. "Emily, I told you before, I need space. Don't make everything into drama. I swallowed my tears. So that's it? After everything I did for you? He looked away. I didn't ask for anything. You offered. That line cut deeper than any blade. I offered because I believed in us, because I believed in love. He left the apartment that night without another word, and for hours I sat there staring at the door. The silence in the room was unbearable. The man I had trusted, cared for, and fought for had turned me into a stepping stone. I could have screamed, thrown things, begged for an explanation. But I didn't. Instead, I started planning. The next morning, I called an immigration lawyer, not to accuse him yet, but to understand what I could legally do. Explained everything in simple, cautious words. If your spouse obtained residency through fraud by deceiving you into a marriage only for immigration purposes, you can report it. USCIS takes that seriously, but you'll need evidence. I had plenty. She told me how to prepare a formal complaint and where to send it. She also warned me, once you report him, he could face deportation or even a ban from re-entry. Are you sure you want to go through with this? I paused for a long time. My heart said yes, but my mind trembled. Was I really ready to destroy someone's life, even if he had destroyed mine? That night, Daniel came home unusually cheerful. He hugged me for the first time in weeks. Good news, he said. My mom's sick, and I think I should go visit her for a bit. Just for a few months. But don't worry, I'll come back. My stomach twisted. A few months. That's what he said. But I knew the truth. He wasn't coming back. I played along, forcing a smile. Of course, you should go see her. He looked relieved, almost surprised by my calmness. You're the best, Em. I'll book my flight soon. After he went to bed, I cried quietly in the bathroom. I wasn't crying because I'd miss him. I was crying because I finally saw the truth. The man I loved never existed. He was a mask, a beautiful lie that I fell for completely. The next day, he was on his laptop again, and I heard the familiar ding of an email. When he left for work, I checked it. A confirmation. One-way flight, Sao Paulo, next Friday. He was really doing it. I could have confronted him right then. I could have screamed, thrown his clothes out, told him I knew everything. But I didn't, because that's not how this story was going to end. He wanted to leave quietly, like a ghost. I was going to make sure he didn't. That evening, I printed every message, every screenshot, every photo I had saved. I put them neatly into a folder, labeled with his full name, and wrote one short sentence on top. Fraudulent marriage for the purpose of obtaining a green card. Evidence enclosed. I placed the folder in my drawer, next to a sticky note with the USCIS fraud hotline number. The day Daniel booked his flight would be the day I made the call. For the rest of the week, I played the perfect wife. I smiled, cooked his favorite meals, and even helped him pack. He thought he had me fooled. But every goodbye kiss he gave me, every fake promise he whispered, it all built the calm fire burning inside me. I wasn't going to cry when he left. I wasn't going to beg him to stay. I was going to watch him walk away, and then I was going to end his little American dream. The morning of his flight came quietly, almost peacefully. The sky outside our window was pale gray, and the apartment smelled like the coffee I'd just brewed. Daniel was humming softly as he zipped up his suitcase, the same suitcase we'd bought together for our honeymoon. I stood at the kitchen counter, staring at him. Every small movement he made felt surreal. The way he folded his shirts, the way he glanced at his phone and smiled at someone unseen, the way he didn't even bother pretending anymore. "You're sure you'll be okay while I'm gone?" he asked, slinging his jacket over one shoulder. His tone was casual, like he was talking to a roommate, not a wife. I forced a smile. "Yeah, I'll be fine." He nodded, clearly relieved. "I'll call you when I land. Don't worry, I'll come back before you even miss me. Before I even miss him. The words were almost funny. He didn't notice the tightness in my smile or the way my hands trembled as I held my coffee mug. He was already gone, at least in his mind. As he double-checked his papers, I caught a glimpse of the green card inside his wallet, the thing he had built his lies around. For a second, I felt a wave of anger rise in my chest. That little piece of plastic had cost me my trust, my peace, and my love. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. He kissed my cheek, a meaningless gesture that felt cold and mechanical. Bye, Em. Take care. I nodded. You too, Daniel. He wheeled his suitcase to the door. When it clicked shut behind him, I stood there in silence. My apartment suddenly felt bigger, emptier. The man I had married was gone, and all that remained was the echo of betrayal. For a long time, I didn't move. I stared at the door, at the empty hallway beyond, and let the quiet sink in. Then, slowly, I walked to my bedroom, opened the drawer, and took out the folder I had prepared. The folder that would end his freedom. It felt strange holding it, like holding the last piece of a broken dream. But I wasn't shaking anymore. I was calm, steady, determined. Silence returned, but it wasn't the heavy, suffocating kind anymore. It was clean, new, like the air after a storm. I placed the folder into a large envelope and drove to the post office. The drive felt surreal, like I was floating. I wasn't angry and I wasn't scared. I just wanted peace. When I dropped the envelope into the outgoing mail bin, I stood there for a second, watching it disappear through the slot. My heart felt strangely light. It was done. I got back in my car, rolled down the window, and took a deep breath. The sky had cleared, and sunlight was breaking through the gray. For the first time in months, I didn't feel trapped. I felt free. By the time I got home, my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Boarding now, love you, don't wait up. I stared at the screen, my lips curved into a small, tired smile. Safe travels, I typed back. That was the last message I ever sent him. 2 days later, I got a call from an immigration officer. They confirmed receipt of my documents and thanked me for my cooperation. Then, almost hesitantly, the officer added, "Ma'am, I can't disclose much, but your report reached us in time. He was detained at the airport before boarding." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Detained at the airport. I pictured him standing at the gate, passport in hand, thinking he was free, until his name popped up on a screen. The officers approaching, the confusion turning into panic, the lies collapsing right where they began. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from relief. "Thank you," I whispered to the officer. "Thank you so much." After the call, I sat by the window watching the sunset paint the city gold. I thought I'd feel vindicated, maybe even happy. But what I really felt was peace. Quiet, bittersweet peace. Daniel had stolen months of my life, but he couldn't steal who I was. I was still Emily, still kind, still strong, and finally free. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, lit a candle, and sat in silence. The apartment didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt like mine again. And for the first time since I met him, I slept through the night without waking up crying.
The days after Daniel's detention felt unreal. I kept waiting for my phone to ring with bad news, or for him to show up at my door, angry and full of excuses. But the apartment stayed quiet, and my world slowly began to find a strange rhythm again. The first real confirmation came a week later. A letter arrived from USCIS, thick and official-looking, with my name printed neatly across the front. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a brief acknowledgement of my report, along with a statement confirming that Daniel's permanent residency status had been placed under review for suspected fraud. I sat at my kitchen table, reading the words over and over until the letters blurred. It was real. They were actually investigating him. He wasn't just gone. He was finally being held accountable. Sarah came over that evening, bringing Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. "So?" she asked, eyes wide. "What happens now?" I slid the letter across the table. She read it, then let out a low whistle. "Wow, they're really going after him." I nodded slowly. "They should. He lied to the government. And to me." She reached out and squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing, Em." For the first time, I believed it. But just when I started to feel settled, Daniel's name appeared on my phone screen. I stared at it for a long time, frozen. He had tried calling 3 times already that week, all from an unknown number. I hadn't answered before, but this time I picked up. "Emily," his voice came through the line, tight and desperate. "Please listen to me." My stomach turned. That same voice once made me feel safe. Now it made my skin crawl. "What do you want, Daniel?" I asked coldly. "They detained me, Em, at the airport. I didn't do anything wrong. They said someone reported me, but I know it was you." "I didn't report you," I said quietly. "I told the truth." He went silent for a moment. Then his tone shifted, pleading now. "Emily, please, you don't understand. I was going to come back. I just needed to take care of things in Brazil. My mom." "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't lie to me again. I saw the emails. You weren't coming back." His voice cracked. "You ruined my life." "No, Daniel," I said, my voice steady. "You ruined it the day you decided to use me." There was a long pause on the line. Heavy, painful. I could hear his breath hitch, could almost picture his expression, the panic, the disbelief that his perfect plan had fallen apart. "Emily, please," he whispered. "If you withdraw the report, they'll let me stay. I'll do anything. I'll fix this. I'll be a better husband." I almost laughed, not out of joy, but out of sheer disbelief. "Better husband?" I repeated. "You were never a husband. You were an actor playing a part until you got what you wanted." He said nothing. I heard the faint sound of him breathing, and then softly he muttered, "You'll regret this." And then the line went dead. I sat there for a long time, holding the phone in my lap, my chest rising and falling in slow, deliberate breaths. I didn't feel scared. I didn't even feel angry. Just empty. And somehow stronger. A few days later, I called the immigration officer handling my case and told her about the call. She thanked me and assured me that Daniel's communication attempts would be noted. "You did the right thing by not engaging further," she said. "His case is under formal investigation. If fraud is proven, his green card will be revoked, and removal proceedings will begin." I thanked her and hung up. I didn't cry this time. I just felt done. The next few weeks were about learning how to live again. At first, it was hard. The silence in the apartment reminded me of him, the ghost of what I thought we had. But slowly, the silence turned into something peaceful. I started leaving the windows open, letting in sunlight and air. I redecorated the living room, moving his things out and replacing them with my own. I donated his clothes, boxed up his leftover stuff, and sent it to a local charity. It was like reclaiming space, piece by piece. Sarah helped me repaint the bedroom one weekend, a pale blue that made the room feel new. We laughed, we sang along to old songs, and for the first time in months, I felt light. "You're getting your life back," she said, brushing a streak of paint off my cheek. "I think I am," I replied. At work, people started noticing the change. I smiled more. I volunteered for extra shifts.
Patients told me I had a calming energy. Maybe because, for the first time in a long time, my energy wasn't being drained by lies. Then, one afternoon, I got another letter, this time from the Department of Homeland Security. It was brief, just 2 paragraphs, but the words made my knees weak. Daniel's green card had been officially revoked. His visa was canceled, and deportation proceedings had been completed. He was gone, permanently. I sat down, staring at the letter in my hands. A single tear slid down my cheek, not from sadness, but from release. It was over. Completely over. Sarah came by that evening again, and when I told her, she hugged me tight. "You did it, Em. You actually did it." "No," I said softly. "I just told the truth. They did the rest." We opened another bottle of wine that night and toasted, not to revenge, but to closure, to new beginnings, to peace. That night, lying in bed, I looked at the empty space beside me and felt nothing but calm.
It's strange how peace doesn't arrive with a bang. It comes quietly, like the sunrise after a long, stormy night. That's what my life started to feel like after Daniel was gone. In the weeks following the letter from Homeland Security, I felt emotions I hadn't let myself feel before. Sadness, anger, relief, pride. They came in waves, each one softer than the last, washing away the last traces of who I was when I met him. At first, I avoided talking about what happened. I didn't want to explain the whole painful story to everyone. When people at work asked why my husband wasn't around anymore, I just said, "We're not together." It was easier than saying he used me for a green card. But the truth is, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Not anymore. One Saturday morning, I walked to the park near my apartment, the same park Daniel and I used to visit when we were first dating. I sat on the same bench where he once told me he loved me, and for a moment, the memories tried to crawl back. His laugh, his touch, the warmth of those early days. But this time, I didn't cry. I smiled. Because I finally understood something I hadn't before. Those memories didn't belong to him anymore. They belonged to me, to the woman who loved fearlessly, who trusted fully, who gave everything she had. And even though he took advantage of that, he couldn't destroy it. I stayed there for a long time, watching families pass by, kids playing, dogs running. Life kept moving, and so was I. 2 months later, I joined a volunteer program for newly arrived immigrants, the kind of people Daniel had once pretended to be. Real people who wanted to build honest lives here. I helped them fill out paperwork, guided them through job applications, and listened to their stories. It was ironic, in a way, helping others navigate the same system Daniel had abused. But it felt good. Healing, even. Because not everyone came here to take advantage. Most came with hope, just like I once had with him. Sometimes the volunteers would ask me why I was so passionate about it. I'd smile and say, because I know what it's like when trust is broken, and I know how important it is to believe in good people again. That's what healing looked like for me. Not revenge, not bitterness, but choosing to believe again. Every now and then I'd get a message from someone who knew Daniel back home, distant relatives of his or old friends who'd heard the story. They'd say things like, "He's back in Brazil now. He's working out his uncle's store. He talks about you sometimes." At first, reading that made my stomach twist, but with time, I just felt indifferent. He wasn't part of my life anymore. Whatever regret or shame he carried was his burden to bear. Mine was long gone. One night, I sat by my window, sipping tea and writing in a journal I'd started after everything happened. On the first page, I had written something
A therapist once told me, "Closure doesn't come when the other person apologizes. It comes when you decide the story is over." I read those words often, and that night, I added something new beneath them. And when you realize the ending made you stronger than the beginning ever did. Life didn't magically turn perfect after that. There were lonely nights, There were moments I doubted my judgment, moments when I questioned whether I'd ever trust someone again. But each time I reminded myself, I survived betrayal once. I could survive anything. One afternoon, about 6 months later, I ran into someone at the hospital, a new resident named Mark. He was kind, funny, and a little awkward. He'd bring me coffee during long shifts and tell bad jokes to make me laugh. At first, I kept my distance. I was polite, friendly, but guarded. Love, after all, had burned me once. I wasn't ready to play with fire again. But one night, as we walked out together after a late shift, he said something that stayed with me. "You don't have to trust me right away," he said softly. "Just don't stop believing that there are still good people out there." And maybe for the first time since Daniel, I believed it. I don't know what will happen with Mark. Maybe he'll just be a friend. Maybe something more. But whatever comes, I'll face it as the woman I am now, wiser, calmer, stronger. Looking back, I don't regret marrying Daniel. That might sound strange, but it's true. Because without that pain, I wouldn't have learned how resilient I really am. I wouldn't have found the courage to stand up for myself, to speak truth even when my heart was breaking. He thought he was using me to get a new life. But in the end, I used the pain he gave me to build one of my own. I closed the chapter on Daniel with no bitterness, no hatred, just gratitude for the lesson and peace for what came after. Now, when I walk through the apartment, sunlight spilling across the floor, I sometimes catch myself smiling, not because everything's perfect, but because I'm finally at peace with everything that isn't. And that, I think, is what real freedom feels like.